Good afternoon. Hope you're all well. Thank you for joining me today on the webinar about COVID-19 traveling safely. My name is Patrick. I'm one of the service managers here at Care First, and I'll be running through the presentation with you today. Of course, feel free to ask any questions that you may have. You should have the questions in the control panel or GoToWebinar, which you can ask anonymously. And obviously at the end of it, I'll go through and answer what I can. I'd also like to just preface that and say that I'm not a counsellor. So if there's any questions that might be a bit more appropriate for a counsellor, then I can point in the right direction. If there's any questions that I can't answer, I'll do my best to come back to you as soon as possible. So I'm going to get into it. So like I said, the presentation is about COVID-19 and how to travel safely after COVID-19. Of course, we're all eager to get back to normal, go away, have some holidays, visit some distant friends and relatives. But of course, COVID-19 is still around. Safety is paramount, really. A, to avoid any harm to yourself and others, but also just another spike of COVID cases. So as much as we're all keen as mustard to get back to normality and go on some holidays, we do also need to bear in mind and think and plan ahead. So this presentation, let's just go through some tips and some points on how to safely travel and what the guidance is from the government. Of course, these points were towards the end of last week, so on the 16th of July. They do change very quickly and sometimes without much notice. So I would just advise, as much as we will go through on this and it will be helpful, if you are planning on going away anywhere anytime soon or travelling anywhere, just check the government website wherever you are, whether that's Scotland, England or Wales. Just check the relevant government website just to get the most up-to-date advice, as like I said, they do change regularly so a few points just to run through. So travelling safely in and around the UK. So you can travel now between different areas. Of course, there's different lockdown, so local lockdowns now which are being put into place, but that will change as and when. But you can control the coronavirus risks yourself by wearing face masks. So hopefully you will all be aware that face masks will be compulsory in shops from the 24th of July, which is tomorrow. So what I would suggest doing is always have a mask with you, whether that's in your bag or in a coat that you wear. If you're driving places in the car, the last thing you want to do is make a trip to the market to be turned away, and it'll be an unnecessary trip. Whether shops and supermarkets will be selling masks at the front to people who have forgotten, I don't know. We'll just have to see how they sort of deal with that moving forwards. So shop locally and less often. So try and plan ahead with your weekly shops. Say weekly shops. Just plan what you can rather than going to the shop every day. Lower your risk to exposure and also spreading as well. So try and plan a weekly shopping list. So you don't go as frequently. If you are going anywhere, consider other options. So if you're going to have to jump on a public transport, whether that's a bus or a train or anything like that, just consider whether there's any other way you can do it. So rather than maybe jumping on a bus for a 2-3 minute ride to the shop, could you walk it? Could you cycle it? Maybe not. You're getting lots of shopping, but just consider alternative options before going on to public transport, because public transport will be quite a risky place to go. Avoid travelling at the busiest times and on the busiest routes. So again, if you're using public transport, if there's a bus route that's particularly busy at a particular time, So, for example, there's a bus route that goes through and picks everybody up when they finish work in a business park or anything like that. Try and avoid that if you can. So again, where possible, I think there's going to be mandated. Everyone in public transport is doing what they can to keep social distancing intact. So also it's down to you too. So where possible, keep your distance when traveling. So if there's all the seats been taken and you're able to stand, you might have to just stand. Of course, always try and keep it within the social distance of where possible. Also, only travel with the local lockdowns in place. You should only travel into, within them, or out of those areas that are on local lockdown when it's essential. But it's advised that you avoid those areas if you can. If you're in one of those areas, you just need to follow the lockdown rules and again not come out of it unless absolutely work. You should not travel at all if you are experiencing any coronavirus symptoms. So if you're showing any of the symptoms, so a cough, temperature, etc., you shouldn't be traveling at all, because if you do have it, obviously you'll be spreading it. You should be self-isolating if that is the case. But again, so if you're self-isolating as a result of having symptoms, then you shouldn't be traveling at all, or whether you've been exposed to others, so friends or family or work colleagues who've had symptoms and been tested positively within your household or your support. So of course, if you come into contact with someone who's then found out that they've got symptoms and now you're starting to show symptoms, you should self-isolate straight away and avoid going out to avoid spreading it. You also shouldn't be traveling if you're deemed as high risk, and your journey will make it very, very difficult to shield as much as you should. So, for example, if you are high risk, you've got an underlying health issue, and you've been shielded for so long, the last thing you want to be doing if you can avoid it is jumping on a bus to go to a shop. You want to see what any other alternatives to sort of get what you need to get done. Also, the test and trace service. So may or may not have experienced this. So you may have, you may not have. But if you are advised by the test and trace service, you may have come into contact with someone who has then later on been confirmed to have COVID-19. Then you're advised to self-isolate for 14 days. So obviously at that point as well, you should not be traveling. So a bit of a checklist for traveling safely. Whether this is a short journey or a longer journey, it's all sorts of relevant. So you should plan your journey. So like I said previously, can you walk or cycle to your destination? What are the alternative transport methods? Have you checked the latest travel advice from your transport operator? So whether that's a bus service being down, or whether you are planning or you've had a holiday booked for so long, or you're planning on going away somewhere abroad, even though it's advised against. Are there specific rules that those airlines are imposing, such as wearing masks, keeping distance, your bags? So check those out so you're very prepared. The last thing you want to be doing is getting somewhere and having a last minute curveball prepared, which then you're at further risk. You want to make your journey as easy and as efficient as possible. Have you booked your travel ticket online? So have you bought a pass, or have you checked that there's contactless payments if possible? Much more now these days with technology, we're able to download and print off things like boarding passes and tickets and all sorts of things like that. So it avoids the need for us to get in contact with other people. However, obviously, if you don't have a printer, like a lot of people don't, then you can use things on your phone still. So most tickets now have QR codes or codes that are scanned. Going into the next point, that's something you need to bear in mind. You also need to be prepared. Have you planned your journey to minimise covered areas or allowed for delays? Sort of goes into what I was just saying about having a direct plan, being as efficient as possible with your journey. You should try and avoid any unnecessary time in public areas. They're busy. It should be just nice. If you have a journey ahead of you and you planned it well enough, it should just be as straightforward as getting from point A to point B with as little downtime as possible. Am I taking most direct routes on destination, which helps? I was previously saying about having a direct route in and avoiding any unnecessary downtime in public areas or exposing yourself. What to take with you when you're traveling? So a face mask or a face covering for longer journeys. Take more than one face covering because of course the outsides can get contaminated. So it's good to cycle through them if you can, and also a plastic bag for used face coverings as well. So you can put them in there and avoid touching them again. Plan for the journey, so you could even spell out your plan. Longer journey, you might not necessarily need to write a big plan up to the top, but if it's going a bit further afield, say for example traveling around the country, then it's better to have a bit of a plan in place. Make sure you have all your tickets or your contactless payment cards or passes. Again, you don't want any last minute curveballs where it's going to mean that you're going to expose yourself to situations that you shouldn't be in or wouldn't be in if you'd brought the right bit. Again, sort of saying with your ability to print off documents and tickets these days, if you haven't, make sure you've got it on your phone so you can continue to use your phone as to scan through any machines or tickets you need, which is very helpful these days. So it avoids unnecessary contact, payments. Always take hand sanitizer everywhere where you can. It was quite hard to get hold of for a little while, but it's much easier now. Everything's stocked up, so always have a bit of hand sanitizer nearby with the right alcohol levels for it to always good to carry with you just in case you do end up touching anything. You can use it to save hands. Essential medicines, of course, as usual, for the obvious reasons, in case you sneeze or anything to avoid spreading. International travel restrictions. Now this is the point where it's a bit more interesting. I'm the same, and I'm sure a lot of people are very eager to get away for a break. Everyone's been in lockdown. Everyone's probably got a bit bored. It's all mundane, being in lockdown, being in the house, not really being able to go out. The desire for a holiday and going away is probably more than ever. So the international travel restrictions are constantly under review with this in mind, because obviously we're all very keen to get out. Obviously the UK government has the public health and safety in the forefront of its mind, and based on COVID reports in the countries and statistics and the data that's coming from those countries, the government's able to introduce travel corridor exemptions, which essentially means that you can travel back from those countries to the UK and not face a self-isolation period. You go back a couple of weeks before, most countries would have had an isolation period. So if you came back from holiday, you would have had to self-isolate for 14 days, just in case you there. However, now the travel corridors basically means that those countries are deemed enough that you're not having to then self-isolate when you. However, those change regularly, quite quickly as well, and can be without notice. bear that in mind, so always check everything. Talking about international travel restrictions, as much as the UK government have given us travel corridors and exemptions, that's one thing I should mention as well. Just because a country is on a travel corridor list, or whether it's England, Scotland, or Wales, they will have their own separate websites and lists. The entry requirements for that country. It's all very well being able to come back to the UK from that country on a travel corridor. However, that country may have slightly different rules for people visiting them. So, for example, you could have a holiday booked and see it on travel corridor, which means that you won't have to isolate to come back. However, when you land there, you might be faced by a isolation period there, which means that you can't really have a regular which makes it a little bit awkward. So to bear that in mind, we can check, plan, and know exactly what you're getting into. As much as we're talking about international travel restrictions and the travel corridors, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the FCO, is still advising against all but essential travel. There's still obviously a global pandemic going on, and although it's not ideal to be traveling, it's still not advised that we should be doing it. Again, like I said, it's being kept under constant review. Not contact, apologies, there was a bit of a time. So yeah, so travel advice can change at short notice, and you can check for the updates on the link below. It'll be difficult for you to follow the link, so just go to government websites or go onto Google and search for travel guidance, international travel restrictions, and or corridors, and it's all at the top of the list because Google have set in place priority during the pandemic. So going back now, so from the 8th of June, even if you were a resident or if you're visiting the UK, you would have had to have self-isolated 14 days upon landing in the UK. So like going back a couple weeks or months, that would have been the case for wherever you came from. You would have had to have provided your journey and contact details as well, should they need to contact you. But like I said, now it's easing up a bit. It's becoming a bit more free for us to sort of move around if you wish. So from July the 10th, you won't have to self-isolate arriving in England, Scotland, or Wales if you travel from one of the listed corridor country. Like I said, it doesn't mean that country won't impose an isolation period on you when you land there, so bear that in mind. But these can change very quickly, and they do actually vary between England, Scotland, and Wales. So be sure to make sure you check that up on travel corridor list. Find online. Again, Google Scotland, just Google Scotland travel corridor countries, or Wales, or so on and so forth. Very easy to get to and to digest. So another point, so if you have in your travels, if you've stopped in or visited a country that is not on the travel corridors list, then you'll still have to survive 14 days on arrival back in the UK. So again, bear that in mind. I don't think any of us would have been flying out, but some people may have had to have stopped or have visited one of those areas recently, and you would still have to self-isolate 14 days after. So when arriving back in the UK, so again, the law is starting to impose that we wear face masks more and more in supermarkets, on public transport. So that applies still, again, when you're on planes and things like that. But like I mentioned earlier, do check the airline rules for that. If you don't have a face mask, or if you're not protecting yourself and others, you can be fined, so bear that in mind. Again, like I said, always be prepared, take face masks, have spares if you can, and go from there. Again, Scotland, Wales, and Northern have slightly differing rules and laws in place, so please do check the relevant government websites, as I I mentioned, very easy to Google. I'll show you some links shortly, which you can follow, but it's pretty straightforward. You just go on to Google and search for relevant terms. Also, people coming back to the UK from abroad, you will need to complete a passenger locator form, and that will need to be given in when you arrive. For both visitors and UK residents, there is a small people that are exempt from doing this, and that's listed on the government website. The passenger locator form is essentially a contact form, so that if a passenger from your plane was then confirmed to have COVID-19, then they would know that that person flew on this plane at this time, and that was also possibly in touch and contact with all of the other people on there. So if someone on your flight is that, they will get in touch with you and say you've come into contact with someone who's displayed symptoms and has been confirmed with COVID-19, and then I'll advise you from there whether you have to self-isolate. So the useful links, which I mentioned, so the travel corridors for England, Scotland and Wales, again, like I said, it's easy to click on them. So Google, just Google for the relevant ones. So England, travel corridors, Scotland, Wales, travel corridors, whatever's relevant to you. Again, also travel guidance as a whole. So some of the points I've touched on throughout this presentation, government websites. So again, like I said at the beginning, it changes quickly, it changes without notice. So do have a look at that. You can actually, on the travel corridors and travel guidance and guidelines, you can register your email to receive regular updates. So you can receive them on a daily basis or weekly, just to so you have they send it to you on email and let you know what the most recent changes are, which is quite helpful. So bear that in mind when you're on that. So I would imagine most of you are aware of who we are as Care First, but those who are new to us, just want to run through a quick point. So we are a professional counselling and information and advice service, and we offer support for issues, whether it's from home or work, which is the same thing, considering most of us are working from home at the moment. The counselling helpline, which you can call, is available 24 hours per day, 365 days a year. You can call and get in-the-moment support or contracted telephone counselling. So if it's in-the-moment support, you just call the support line. You go straight through to a counsellor, and you can talk to them quickly. There's no sort of reception or waiting period. It should be quite instant. So yes, support at the moment or contract telephone counselling sessions. So if you present an issue that it would be actually appropriate for you to have counselling sessions, then that will be arranged as well. The information specialist services runs actually from 8 AM to 8 PM Monday to Friday. Now you can talk to one of our information specialists. They're all trained with citizens advice, and they can advise you on a long list of things from finance to employment, housing, the list goes on. And if there's anything that they can refer you to or signpost you to external sources of help, they will do that as well. So by all means, use that when you can. Online counselling is available. So if you log into the Lifestyle website, you'll be able to get the user credentials, the username and password from your HR department. You can be able to log in through there, go on to online counselling and chat online. The Care First Lifestyle website is also very useful in terms of material. So there's lots of articles and recorded webinars, much like this, covering a range of topics, all of which can be very useful. So it might be a nice little starting point. And there are lots of people on the Lifestyle website to use the material on there first, and then if they want to from there, they call the support line. But equally, there's nothing stopping you from calling the support line first. You need to call them. We also offer management consultancy and advice. So any managers that are going to have any difficult conversations with staff or any issues arising organising, we offer advice on that as well. Of course, everything that is mentioned on the support lines counsellors is not shared with any third parties or with your organisation. The only time this confidentiality may be broken is on the three exceptional circumstances, which is the threat to life of another person, child protection and vulnerable adult issues, or risk to security of the organisation. That's the end of the presentation. If you've got any questions after this and you want to get in touch with us, please do email info@care-first.co.uk, the email address on your screen. I'm going to go through a few questions now. I'll answer what I can. Hopefully I can do it. So bear with me a moment, I'll have a look. Okay, so we've had a report of some sound issues, so apologies if you've experienced that. We have had this before. It's not normally for everybody, unfortunately, but the recording, which you'll be able to access by using the same link, and we'll upload it onto the Lifestyle website shortly after this, normally has a audio recording. So if you really want to re-listen to it, you can do. But apologies if you've had any experienced any issues with that. Yes, so someone's pointed out that face masks are for England only and not for Wales. As I tried to mention, the rules do vary between England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So as much as points and tips I give, they do change frequently and vary between different nations. So please always bear that in mind and just double check rather than taking what we've possible, as it does change. Is Turkey on the list? And yes, you found it on the website, so yes. But again, like I said, if you check what the rules are if you're visiting Turkey, for example, if you've had a holiday booked in for quite some time, and you're able to see them on the corridor list, if they very well be able to come back from there, but just check what the guidelines are from the Turkey and make sure that there isn't any entry requirements or isolation periods for when you arrive. Those are all the questions that I've got so far. So if you do have any questions afterwards, please do, like I said, email info@carefirst.co.uk. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And any questions, feel free to drop me an email and let me know. Okay, have a good day, guys. Speak soon.